Hi everyone,
Hi.
welcome to
Hi.
Orbis Intersect. Today we're going to be talking with Simran Ahira, who's an artist, singer-songwriter from London, UK, and we're going to be talking about BPD with her. And yeah, so let's take it away. Introduce yourself, Simran. Let us know what you do, and yeah, all of that.
Cool. Yeah, my name is Simran Ahira, and I'm a 22-year-old artist living in London, and I have BPD. About to start internship at a mental health charity called Body and Soul.
And could you tell us a little bit about your journey with BPD?
Yeah, this might be a bit long, so I'm sorry, but I guess like before I had BPD symptoms, I had struggled with anxiety and anorexia when I was growing up. And then when I was about 19, I started getting really bad BPD symptoms. Like basically, I was having really, really bad mood swings. And when I was having like a low, it was just really bad and I would get really suicidal. And I was having problems with like getting too attached to people and just like being, I don't know, it was just kind of a mess. And I went to the GP and they thought I had depression. So I started taking antidepressants and that didn't really help because I didn't have depression. And some people thought I was bipolar because of the mood swings. And then one psychologist said, I think you might have BPD, but you're too young to be diagnosed. So I was like, oh, what's BPD? I didn't really look into it because they didn't give me a proper diagnosis, but I was still waiting for like therapy and I was getting more serious like mood swings and just feeling like really confused, and I started self-harming and I started having problems with like self-medicating with alcohol, and everything just got way too much and I had to drop out of uni. And then I was still waiting for treatment, and I was really suicidal and I had several suicide attempts, and the last one was very serious and I ended up in a psychiatric hospital for a while, and finally they were like, okay, you definitely have BPD. And after I was discharged, still had to wait 6 months for therapy. But luckily, like now I had the diagnosis, they knew exactly what therapy I needed. But while I was waiting, this charity that I'm interning at now, called Body and Soul, gave me group therapy via Zoom call because it was lockdown. And that was the dialectical behaviour therapy, which is the recommended treatment for BPD. But it was just group therapy, so I think like you need like one-to-one as well. But that really helped me to get through, and now I've just started proper one-to-one and group from the NHS, and finally starting to like kind of get a better hold on it. But that's pretty much the whole journey. Oh my god, that was so long, but that was the whole journey. Yeah. Oh my god.
So in terms of symptoms, you've explained pretty much what you were going through, but can you go a little bit more into details about it, like when you started experiencing symptoms and like what it was for you, how did you feel and all of that? I know that you've mentioned it, but you know, it's because you were explaining the whole thing, maybe we can just dive a little deeper into it, if that's okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I guess yeah, I mean, like, I don't know if this is a BPD thing, but like my memory is like really bad. But I guess like when you're in a really intense emotional pain, like your memory just shuts off anyway, because it's like, I think someone said like when you're like having like extreme emotional pain, your brain is just like, oh, we don't need to do memories right now, like we like so yeah, I find it really hard to like remember like the worst days. But like
How did it feel for you? How does it feel for you when you experience symptoms? Because I'm sure you experience symptoms now, even though sure that you can manage it like better than before. But how does it feel for you when you experience symptoms, even now? You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, 3 years ago, but even like, yeah, now, if you can remember at all.
Okay, I mean, I guess like it's a very complicated disorder and there's so many like layers to it and components to it, but mostly I think the hardest part is just the really intense emotions. And I think like people kind of get confused by that because they're like, oh, everyone has intense emotions, but it's like, I don't think they understand like how painful it is and like how often it happens. It's just like constantly, like every day, just like really difficult emotions at times when it's not really like appropriate, like just really intense emotions over really small things. And like a lot of people are like, oh, you know, you're just sensitive, but yeah, I am sensitive, like that's not my fault, that's just how I am. And it's like it causes so much pain, and I think like you start trying to find ways to deal with it, which is when it becomes like quite dangerous. Like you're like, that's why you turn to like self-harm or drugs and alcohol, because you're just like trying to find ways to like numb the pain, because it's just so painful, like the emotions and like just reaching this like really intense like like panics like all the time, and like deep sadness and like intense fear all the time, and like feeling like really strong like attachment to people. And it's like it's so draining and like it's just so painful, and you just feel like so confused as well. Like you just don't, like often you just don't know what the fuck is going on, and you're like, so you just like, yeah, you just reach for whatever is there. Like it's
Yeah.
it's really scary basically, I would say.
Cool.
You know, when you go online, there is like you find a lot of comments about BPD and of course a lot of stigma. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's, I mean, for me, like I haven't experienced that much stigma like personally. I think like when I heard, when I was first told I might have BPD, I had never heard of it before. Like not really, so I had no clue what it was. So yeah, I wasn't like aware that there would be a stigma attached. And when I mention it to other people, a lot of the time they're like, oh, what's that? Like they don't actually know what it is. So I haven't really experienced the stigma, but I know that like I think people think that people with BPD are violent or something, or like dangerous. And I think what's happening there is like there are 9 symptoms and you only have to have 5 out of the 9. And I have 8, and one of the symptoms is explosive anger. And I was told I don't have that one, but I think some people that have that might like kind of lash out sometimes, but I don't think everyone with BPD does. I mean, like, I think from what I know, a lot of people with BPD kind of express their anger inwardly, like, and take it out on themselves. So I think like the stigma around it is definitely like not, I don't know, it doesn't really make sense to me. And I haven't really experienced anyone kind of, yeah, stigmatizing me personally. But I
So
think
that's that. Yeah, go ahead.
I just think the problem is like no one's really educated about it. So like either people just don't know what it is, or they think it's something that it's not, basically.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah.
you don't feel scared about telling people that you have BPD, therefore, because you don't think you can be stigmatized by people around you. Is that how you feel about the people you have around you then?
I think
And
like
would you be scared of telling like a new person that you're meeting for the first time, if they're like, oh, Simran is acting a little bit, weird, and maybe you realize that they feel a little bit like about the whole, relationship, would you feel scared about telling a new person,
I think before I wasn't, like, because I didn't know because when I heard the name BPD, I automatically just researched about it and like found out what it was about. And like when you research it, you're just like, oh, this is a really, really horrible mental illness that's really painful and like often stems from childhood trauma, and like you have like all these really difficult things you have to deal with. So I was just like, this is awful. Like, it doesn't, if you research it, you see doesn't make you a bad person. So I felt okay telling people about it because I was like, this will help people understand. And then like the BPD hashtag banning thing happened and all of that stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, maybe I shouldn't tell people, maybe it's not. And like I kind of realized that a lot of people do have skewed ideas about what BPD is, and they get it mixed up with other personality disorders like narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, because they kind of just like think, oh, personality disorder, so you're automatically like a toxic person or something. So I guess now I'm a bit more wary about it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so but then another thing is, I guess, like just telling people that you have a mental illness in general is kind of scary. Like I think people are just like quite judgmental about, well, it feels like people can be just quite judgmental about that in general. Like even if like right now I'm struggling with depression and I still feel like really embarrassed to tell people about that as well.
Do you think that embarrassment is caused also because people don't take it seriously? Because that's how I feel about, you know, people who have, you know, anxiety, depression, or whatever other mental disease, let's call it that way. I just feel like other people who might not experience that, like really diminish it because they don't believe it is true, you know? Do you think that sort of embarrassment is caused by that as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think like there's this thing of like you can't see it, so it's not real. Like invisible disabilities are just like so like belittled all the time because you can't see it, but that doesn't make it less real. And I definitely think that's the problem. And like if you've never experienced depression or anxiety or BPD or anything like that, there's no way you can know what it's like. And I think a lot of people kind of react in a way that's like, oh, you're weak, like, oh, you're just being weak, you're being like, grow up, like, you know. And there's that kind of thing, like I think more so in some cultures than others. Like just the idea of like, oh, you're being a baby, like, and they don't understand like these are real illnesses. Like it's the same as a physical illness. And I think the problem is like people are just not educated about it. Definitely not enough.
Yeah, I agree.
When I spoke to people as well, there is an experience that is very shared where it's like when they tell their family that they have BPD, they often get dismissed. And I've also, you know, just asking as well about why. There is a lot about, because there is a lot of childhood trauma that family does not want to actually acknowledge that there is there. And I wanted to ask you, how has your relationship changed with your family since your diagnosis?
Yeah, I think some people like were as relieved as I was just to be able to understand me better. Like I think some people were like, oh my god, thank god, now I have something to like read about and like know what's going on. And like they really tried hard to like do as much research as they can, and it helped our relationships a lot, like just to be able to know what was going on. And like because like so much of BPD is so upsetting for the people around them, just because like I mean the people around me found it really upsetting just because I was going through so much pain and they didn't know what to do and they didn't know what was going on and they didn't know how to help me. And it just feels like everyone just feels helpless in that situation. So when I got the diagnosis, I was like, oh, thank God, now we know what we need to do. And now we know what's going on and like why it's happening and everything. But then I think other people were like, I think some people don't like labels and they think like labels are not helpful. But like for me, it definitely was. So I think sometimes it did cause a conflict people, like when people were like, oh, I don't think you need this label, it's going to make you like relate too much to it and you're going to like define yourself by this label. But for me, it was just like, now I understand myself and I can improve. And a lot of people did agree with that, and that was really great. So yeah, bittersweet. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least you've got a better understanding about yourself and how to manage it, obviously. Talking about families, there's a stigma around BPD. That's basically saying that, you know, people who have BPD are not suitable to be parents because of the way they might treat their kids and all of that. And obviously, you've said that you're on your, you know, journey with BPD and you're sort of managing it a little bit better than before. How do you feel about that? Like, I know that it might be too early for you to have kids, but knowing that you will still have, you know, those bad days as such, would you feel comfortable? Like, what do you think about that? Do you think people with BPD can be suitable to be parents? And how do you personally feel about that?
I mean, it's hard to answer this just because like I don't have any experience of having kids or like having a parent with BPD. So I don't want to say anything like inaccurate, but like if I was kind of like imagining, like I guess being a parent just seems challenging in general. And like if you have a mental illness on top of that, I feel like it would just be even more challenging. But I think like people definitely just have this idea that people with BPD are like really violent and like just like really angry people or something, and I don't think that's true. I think like it's just a very painful mental illness, and like it's just really difficult to live with. So I think it would be challenging to be a parent just because that's a lot of stress. But another thing is like people with BPD have a lot of love, like so much love, just because we feel things so strongly, and that includes love. So I think like I feel like in that way I would make a good parent, and like people with BPD would make good parents just because we'd give our kids so much love. So I think there are good and bad sides to it.
Yeah, because honestly, like when, you know, even researching online, I found so many nasty things about if, you know, if you have a kid, I mean, if you have BPD, you shouldn't have a kid. That's so selfish of you. Why would you even do that? And looking at that, I was just so hurt because, you know, I thought like I have a little sister, and my mom had her when she was when I was 15, and you know, I gave my sister all the love that I could ever have. And you know, and then I thought to myself, like I did, you know, I said, oh, okay, I don't want to have kids, but then now I'm actually thinking like maybe I do want to have kids. And reading those comments, I was just like devastated, because I was like, man, that's not true, you know, like I'm not an awful person, and I'm not horrible, and I'm not here to hurt anyone like that, especially like knowing what a bad childhood is. I'm not gonna give that to someone else. So yeah, I mean that question, it was like, I don't know, just to show also people that it is not like that. You know, like we're not monsters. And one of the other features that there is a lot of online is the be manipulative basically, and that is like you can see it everywhere. Like people talk about that a lot, and I wanted to ask you, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I find that interesting, like, because being manipulative is not like a symptom of BPD. It's like, so I think that's just something people have like put on there. But like, I don't know, I feel like it's just like maybe some people have known people with BPD who would just happen to be manipulative because they're manipulative people. I don't think everyone with BPD is manipulative, maybe a few, just because some people are manipulative, like as people, but it's definitely nothing to do with BPD. I feel like maybe some people might have thought I was being manipulative because, like, I don't know, when someone tells you they're feeling suicidal, it can feel like they're being manipulative. but like that was just the truth for me. Like I was feeling suicidal. Like I wasn't trying to manipulate anyone. It was like I was trying to get help, and I don't think that is manipulative, but I can see why someone might think it is, if because like some people do use those words as like to try to get people to like, yeah, I don't know, to manipulate people. But I like, if someone with BPD says they're feeling suicidal, they probably are, because we often do feel suicidal. So I think like I can understand why people might think that, but I don't think it's true at all.
Yeah, I just feel like sometimes if people experience some sort of mental illness, I just think it's so easy for other people to just blame it on the illness, as opposed to that's just a feature that some people have. Like some people are manipulative, but on top of that, if they have BPD or anxiety or depression, it's so easy for people to say, oh yeah, it's because they have this disease or that disease, because it's just so easy to blame it on it, I guess. So yeah.
I mean, like the thing is, me personally, I've never met anyone with BPD that's a bad person. Never. Like I've just been told like these things, but I've never met anyone with BPD that's a bad person. Everyone I've met with BPD just like takes everything out on themselves. Like I don't know anyone that doesn't. So it's like, yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah. So you've talked about your journey with the NHS and with therapy. What did you find is the best coping strategy for you? How are you managing your BPD, your symptoms?
So yeah, I've been having dialectical behavior therapy, which is the recommended treatment for BPD, and it's like sometimes it's easier than others. Like obviously, like when I'm having a really hard time, it's really hard to put the skills into practice. Like DBT just teaches you skills to help you deal with the symptoms, and it's all about like doing homework and like practicing the skills. So it's a lot of work. It's really hard. Some days I'm like, I really don't want to do this, but like I know that it is helping, and a lot of people have said they've seen a big change in me, and I do feel like more self-aware and like a bit more in control. But yeah, it's not an easy journey. I think I do have a long way to go still, but I think DBT is definitely like very helpful. That's my coping strategy anyway. Yeah.
And if anyone thinks they might have BPD, what would you tell them?
First of all, I feel very sorry for you. Like, big hug to you. And also, I think try to get a diagnosis, because it will help you, and just like to validate yourself and to be able to tell people so you can get the right treatment. But I know that getting a diagnosis is really hard, like, and you have to wait a long time, and sometimes you have to pay for it if you're in a country that doesn't have free healthcare. So if you're going to have to diagnose yourself, then like I'd be very careful with that, just in case you misdiagnose yourself and like you're missing out on the treatment that you need to get. Because I think like sometimes people can get bipolar and BPD mixed up, and bipolar like requires a completely different treatment to BPD. So like you need to just be careful and make sure you do a lot of research, like do as much reading as you can, and then reach out for help, like talk to people, try to be honest, like don't try and do this by yourself, like try to have a support system around you, don't block people out of your life, like try to like stay connected to people and just be honest with how you're feeling, and try to look into DBT skills, dialectical behavior therapy, because they do really help. Like if you think you have BPD traits, just try and look into those, because they actually help people without BPD as well. There's this really great thing called Mindset, which the charity I'm interning at is running, and it's this like online live stream and other resources that teach DBT skills for free. So you can register for that, and you can find it through the charity's Instagram bio, which is at Body and Soul Charity. And yeah, just like sign up for that, and like look into DBT skills. I think they're really helpful. And just be kind to yourself is what I'd say as well. Like, this is a really difficult mental illness, and you just need to like be easy on yourself. That's what I have to say.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your words and for sharing your story.
Thank you
I
guys
bet it's
for
not
listening.
easy.
Thanks. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've learned a lot.
Yes.
So
Yes. It was beautiful, you know, and your self-awareness as well. It's very inspiring.
yeah, I guess that's a good thing, you know, to be self-aware and to work on yourself. And yeah.
I thank you so much for talking about this, and like I'm very grateful that you guys are helping spread awareness about this, because more
Absolutely.
people need to know. So thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
We're just gonna put all the links to the charity and to Simran's social profiles as well. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.